and that is supporting people in achieving their goals or accomplishing their tasks through effective and maybe even pleasurable or enjoyable interaction with information and or data, right? And it's with respect to accomplishing this goal that I'd like to consider the relationships among these three disciplines and the opportunities that arise from a particular historical and technological and social situation that where we find ourselves in now. Now, the BIRDS model of the relationships of information science, information retrieval, and data science is a little bit different from my understanding of it, but I have to confess that really my experience has been with information science and information retrieval. Indeed, I think I consider myself a member of both of these disciplines. And I know less about data science. So my talk is, you should take at least aspects of my talk from with this small bit of bias, okay? However, here's my take on what each of these disciplines brings to the table with respect to the problem that I mentioned. So information science is, as in the BIRDS model, I understand it to be concerned with understanding people's information problems, the tasks that they engage in, their goals, their problems in achieving their goals, the information problems associated with the tasks, what kinds of information or data might be useful in addressing them, and so on. And I want to emphasize that information science does consider both individuals and groups of individuals, such as communities of practice or disciplines. This has been consistent. Information retrieval's expertise lies, I think, in methods of representation of information problems, in designing systems which help to retrieve information objects which have been represented and organized in useful ways, in particular through estimation of relevance or usefulness. And in particular, information retrieval is quite strong in developing formal models of users and nudge systems, and in the design and implementation of systems. Okay, and most recently, of course, IR has been concerned with personalization. Data science, you see this is a little bit emptier, this particular slide. But what the aspects of data science that I think are particularly germane to the problem of support of people's interactions with information and data are methods and practices of data sensing itself, the collection and organization, manipulation, and so on of data, and in particular the relationships of the varieties of different kinds of data to individual, group, and social behaviors, goals, and problems. In this respect, I see data science, I'm looking in particular at the computational social science aspects of what I understand to be data science. So how have these fields interacted with one another in the past? Information science and information retrieval have a long and somewhat checkered history. Uh, they have actually started out, they actually did start out together in the late 1940s, and in the 1950s, with librarians, and we might remember that Cyril Cleverden, in fact, was a science librarian, and other information scientists working together with a variety of people coming from a wide variety of disciplines, all focused on a particular specific problem. At that right time, it was, let's say, automation of retrieval of documents with respect to an expressed need. These two fields split apart in the 1960s into effectively library and information science and information retrieval associated with computer science departments. From about the late 70s and early 1980s, there had been attempts to bring them back together. Tefko Saracevic and I were among these people, and this is now we see more explicit interaction amongst these fields, in particular with Ingerson and Järvelin's book, The Turn, and Sigai Archir. It's important that these examples of interaction between information science and information retrieval have all also incorporated human-computer interaction. And I am actually going to include HCI as one of the disciplines that I think is important and that needs to be in the mix when addressing the problem, our common problem. Data science and information science have had some recent interaction. That with which I'm most familiar is through data curation, through the study of uses and users of data, and in particular in education for data science in library and information science academic departments. My understanding, and certainly that's been reinforced in today's talks, is that DS and IR have also had some recent interaction, particularly through recommendation systems, machine learning, to some extent now fairness, right, and related statistical techniques. But there's been a little interaction amongst all three parties, and let me say all four parties if I add HCI. So that's what I see as the focus of BIRDS, and the focus of this talk is something about how can these disciplines come together in ways that are useful for each discipline individually and also for some larger common goal. And I'm going to say that the era, what I've called the era of information ubiquity, is where I would like to start this talk, or this is the framework within which I'd like to couch the possibilities for interaction amongst the disciplines. So we're faced now with an environment in which we're ubiquitously and constantly merged, not emerged, sorry, in a sea of information and data. And these are data of all kinds, information from increasingly varied and numerous sources. Our refrigerators our highways, our doorbells, our relatives, are the people whom we do not see in person any longer for the last few months. These various and numerous sources come in varied and numerous media types, in numerous modalities, in a variety of different contexts, and importantly, information and data are pushed at us rather than in the traditional IR model of being pulled in response to a request. So by information of all kinds, texts, images, sounds, smells, numbers, right? Mashups, okay? This is stuff that we know about already. Increasingly varied and numerous sources, knowledge bases, places like things like our refrigerators, the environment around us, like the temperature, information about ourselves that's being recorded on our Fitbits or whatever, and the devices that are being inserted into our bloodstream, right? Information from others in particular is very important. And information in increasingly varied and different media types. Also, I don't need to go through these, but we understand that we're getting more we're faced with information in an increasingly varied media environment. Importantly, information is available in increasingly varied and numerous modalities and devices. So we're apprehending information not just as I'm doing right now through a keyboard and a computer monitor, but also hearing, feeling, touching. We interact in a variety of ways with haptic interfaces, and through screens and keyboards ever less, and ever more through speech, and we can see holograms, roads, the environment in general, right? We are no longer tethered to necessarily tethered to a computing device, and this is a direction that is clearly increasing. Information, and what I'm going to focus on for the most in particular is the increasingly varied and numerous contexts in which we engage with information. In our physical, we have our physical contexts, that is the home, the workplace, third places, occasional places. We have social contexts. We need to think about how the ways in which the situations in which we engage with information. We engage in physical places, but also at the same time in social places, and also in the same time in cognitive states, different kinds of cognitive states, and also in terms of different kinds of purposes. So an issue that arises for support for interaction with information is how do we manage to take account of these different contexts simultaneously in thinking about how to support, how they affect a person's tasks, goals, and information problems, and how do they affect how we can respond and support them in achieving those goals or tasks. And as I mentioned, increasingly pushed competes with or even replaces pulled information. Proactive IR is certainly an example of this. Recommendation systems, I noticed that SIG-IR is approximately at least one half of of the presentations at this year's SIG-IR had to do with recommendation systems, which is a really radical term. Okay. Think about those of you who haven't read or seen Fahrenheit 451. I highly recommend it right now for thinking about where we are and where we might be going. Okay, so in this kind of an ubiquitous information environment, as ever more information, data, and affordances for interacting with information and data become available to people, what we can expect is that their uses, their demands, their needs, and their behaviors will expand commensurately. Okay, that is, we become accustomed to doing more things and to having things the way that the technology affords us, and to influence the technology to make it even more personal. So one of the things that happens in this, this is a consistent finding as technological support for information interaction has been implemented through our history. As people become accustomed to information and data immersion, then around them, being pushed at them, they're becoming, I believe that they will become ever more likely, ever less likely to engage with systems which are not embedded in their specific contexts. That is, okay, we are heading towards a place where the concept of information systems that people use is going to be an unuseful concept. Rather, we're going to need to think about supporting people in their everyday behaviors rather than users of systems that we provide that they go to. What this suggests is that techniques and systems will need to become, in the general case, invisible, not explicit. However, it seems pretty clear, okay, that is invisible, but not gone away. Clearly, we're going to need the systems. It's how they are apprehended and understood by people will change. And therefore, the kinds of systems that will need to be developed will have to change in order to address the multidimensional situations that people are going to be experiencing. I suggest that in this case, in order to do this, such systems will need to become what I've called radically personalized. And I'll talk immediately about what that means. But I want right up front to mention and stress that this suggestion means that the fields that we talk about are going to have to address difficult ethical issues. Okay, if we accept these assumptions that we're going to deal with people and not users and people in everyday lives, we're going to radically personalized support means studying, understanding, and responding to what I've thought of as the ubiquitous, the person in a variety of contexts. Okay, the person who's always in contact, always available for interaction with information, and always has the opportunity to interact with information and data. We need to think about the person's cognitive situations. We need to be able to respond to the person's affective states. We need to understand the social milieu in which the person finds her or himself. We need to understand their goals, or people without a goal state. One of my favorite ideas here is that of the flaneur, who wanders through the city without goals, but apprehends and is engaged with the information environment about themselves. And the embodied person, that is something that has become more common as we, in our understandings of information and in support for people, is that the actual physical presence and the actual physicality of the person makes an important, has significant influence on their interactions and with information and their behaviors with information. So what does this mean? It means taking account of and responding to all of these facets of the person in an integrated fashion, maybe even simultaneously. That's a difficult issue. It means making interaction with information the given rather than the problematic. Okay, that is, at the moment, interaction with information is understood to be is understood to take place in what we can construe as a problematic situation. That is, a person recognizes a problem and then goes to a system in order to address that problem. Rather, now we're moving to a state, and we should be moving to a state in which we're trying to make interaction with information the ordinary rather than the extraordinary. From this point of view, as far as the person is concerned, there may be no IR systems, just effective interaction with information as and when appropriate. And I do point out that this is a long-time goal of IR, in particular with respect with embedding information retrieval within the task context. So how can ISIR, data science, and I think we have to say, given how people can interact, support for people's direct interaction with information, we have to think about HCI. How can they support radical personalization? Okay, not just through adopting one another's methods, techniques, and theories, as was one of the goals of the BIRDS workshop, but rather through a sensitive and what I'd like to say, a sensitive and interdisciplinary collaboration in addressing the overall problem that I started with. Now, those of you who were fortunate enough to hear Elizabeth Churchill's keynote presentation on Wednesday will be familiar with the next slide, which I think very nicely encapsulates the problem and the aspects of the problem of support for people's support for people's interaction with information in respect to their goals, tasks. Okay, this was getting the right information in the right place at the right time and in the right format. this was, okay, that is, we need to be able to understand the person's tasks, goals, and the information problems associated with those tasks and goals uh, in their everyday contexts, and present and supporting their interactions with with information and data in the right in the place in which they find themselves, or the right place, delivered when when it's going to be most useful, and presented in a way that is most effective for their specific situation at that time. So this is, and notice that she said visual, auditory, haptic, and so on. So even though Elizabeth was talking about information retrieval systems as represented by Google, we can see that this will extend into the everyday natural environment where people don't necessarily interact directly with a system. Okay, so I put this up because we want to think about daily information needs. Okay, am I going to need an umbrella? Do I need an umbrella? Where is the nearest dog park? Because my dog needs to play. Just to say, again, this is from Churchill's talk, that there are information needs that take place in the everyday environment that we need to be able to understand. Okay, so this provides, addressing this problem, I think, provides a great opportunity for interaction amongst the three disciplines and HCI. Each discipline has expertise useful for addressing different aspects of radical personalization. So IS in understanding everyday tasks and goals, DS in identifying and analyzing and providing appropriate data types, streams, IR in representing and organizing and retrieving appropriate information types, HCI in designing and implementing appropriate interaction methods. What I'd like to point out is that it seems to me quite clear that no single discipline of these can address the goal as a whole. None of us has as an individual discipline or member of an individual discipline, the expertise that's necessary to address the goal as a whole. So collaboration amongst them all is necessary in order to address this general problem of radical personalization, of support for interaction with information through radical personalization. And okay, so these are all, this provides great opportunity for effective interaction, and such effective collaboration could then lead to interesting cross-fertilization in respect to adopting one another's methods, techniques, and theories. However, there are significant challenges for doing radical personalization beyond the obvious ones that are specific to each discipline's expertise. Okay, so for instance, how to integrate within, should one integrate support within a single framework or support tailored to specific circumstances? How well do we need to understand people? How much do we need to know in order to do a good job? Okay, I'll come back to this. How are we going to be able to take account of all of the facets of the person context in an integrated fashion? This is a severe problem of great interest, and one that should be, if we can resolve it, will be important for all of the disciplines. Should we integrate or separate information and data in support system design? Just an open question, and we don't really know how to answer that. I said we need to do sensitive collaboration. Okay, so the challenge for interaction amongst those disciplines is, first of all, do we agree coming to agreement on a common goal? Is this a goal that is indeed in common? We all have experienced, I believe, institutional disciplinary boundaries that have prevented effective collaboration. And these need to be overcome. In academia, it's much more difficult than in industry, in my experience, but it nevertheless is a consistent problem. We have to realize that effective collaboration
Hello, Nick. Is Nick frozen to you or just to me?
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, me neither. Okay.
Collaborating with colleagues on putting together in collaborating with colleagues in computer science and putting together a grant proposal. We spoke for 3 months before we understood that we were using the same word in entirely different meanings. We need also to balance the interests of the participants. Academic and industrial interests might not align. The profit motive is perhaps less important in academia than in industry. Social science and computer science interests might not align. What we want to learn and know about may be quite different, and it may be difficult for us to reconcile and to come into agreement. There are also general challenges for support for information, for radical personalization. Who's going to fund or support this kind of interaction? And am I really suggesting something that is totally unrealistic? I don't think so, but at least we need to address that. And most importantly, is radical personalization actually a good idea in principle? Should anyone know, any one institution, any person, any organization know as much about an individual as radical personalization implies at all? And what will the various and as I said before, how much do we need to know about a person in order to be able to effectively support them? This is a problem, I will tell you, that has been consistent in librarianship for many, throughout its existence. Is it ethically correct to ask a person what they want to, what they're going to do with the information that that we would like to provide them? To know that helps the librarian immensely in helping the person to find the right information. But knowing that also could be more than one should know. Okay, so this is an issue that we need to address, and I think one that that has been brought up already in the NICE workshop at SIGIR 2019 in Paris on this issue. So, in conclusion, the ubiquitous information and data environment requires ubiquitous support for interaction. I think that radical personalization will be necessary to accomplish such support. I think that doing radical personalization will require collaborative contributions from at least these 4 fields. Such collaborative contributions will be, such a collaboration will be useful not only in and of itself, but also it may lead to cross-fertilization amongst the different disciplines, which will lead to advancement for each discipline in and of itself. And finally, I can't stress this enough, it's necessary to consider the ethical problems of radical personalization, at least while we're doing it, if not before. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
So it's time for some questions. Quite many people. So if firstly, Graham, you unmute yourself. Did you? Graham, you have a question?
No, sorry, I didn't have a question. But
Oh, okay. Right, sorry. Yeah, not raising hand up.
So I have a question. I mean, I would have many questions, but I have to limit myself. First of all, thank you very much. I still remember when in the 1989 in Padua, you talked to us about the anomalous state of knowledge. That was for me a really seminal concept that shaped me, the mind in information retrieval. So, but my question is regards your view of the integration of these 3 subjects. And you that in practice we should. So my opinion is that there should be some initiatives at the level of education or training. So because sometimes researchers and professors are too old to change their mind and the perspective. So do you think that it would be possible to list some important, crucial subjects that should be taught to students, or perhaps PhD students, to have that these students can have such an holistic view of information retrieval, information science, data science altogether? How would you design a master or PhD program to that aim? We lost Nick.
Yeah, I think Nick had lost the
Your question was too long.
The topic is very complex indeed.
Yeah, now Nick added the HCI, so we got even bigger topic now to talk about.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Oh,
Nick,
here you are.
I can't hear you.
You need to unmute yourself, Nick, please.
Nick, you should unmute your...
Read it on
Yeah.
internet connection there for a couple of minutes, so I missed what you said.
Should I repeat my question?
Massimo
Yes,
had a
please.
quick question, very short one.
A quick question.
But I think you
So
talked
how
about education for
Yeah.
3 disciplines. Is that right?
That's right.
In some integrated way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I think that's that we should be aiming for that. But I'm not sure that we'll be able. But Okay, as I said, I've been involved, I've been trying to do information science and information retrieval education in an integrated way for a long time, all right? And that's been okay, but difficult, all right? And it's unclear to me that that I don't know whether a single academic department is able to host all three disciplines comfortably. I mean, I'm just not sure about that. I think about, you know, there are certainly the information schools, right? The iSchools. But when one looks at iSchools and they either have different disciplinary departments within them, right? Or they actually are focused on only one or perhaps two of the areas at most in an integrated way. Partially, in part, that I think that's due to academic convention and issues like promotion and tenure, right? Who does what, where do, an understanding of one another's disciplines and disciplinary conventions. It's just real hard to overcome disciplinarity, right? The only places that I've seen that overcome are labs like Bell Labs or Belkin or indeed Microsoft Research, at least in some areas. Okay, but that's when people focus on a problem rather than on a discipline. I guess that's why I said, that's why I'm trying to talk about a problem which is common to all of the disciplines, which allows them to come together. My guess is that the best that we can do for education is to try to introduce people a little bit to each area within the context of the specific discipline that's being addressed, that's the focus of that particular department. I see little hope for interdisciplinary structures, and academia, which is where education takes place, are very difficult to support, as I'm sure all of you have experienced. Sorry about the long answer.
There was a longer question.
Can I have some comment?
Thank you.
Yeah, may I have some comment on Nick's answers? Because Nick mentioned this, you know, different disciplines, tenure and promotion and culture. So I have my own personal experience because I graduated from information school, and then I now work as a faculty member at a computer science department. So my feeling is that the two fields share some similar research questions or problems, but the cultures of the two fields are very, very different in terms of where they publish, in terms of the, you know, all the evaluation criteria, the tenure and promotion. So I actually personally overcome a lot of barriers to get my tenure. But I think, you know, in the future, I feel most disciplines should be more open-ended, open-minded in terms of the, you know, the publications, in terms of all kinds of promotion and tenure stuff.
Let's hope.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think there's too much like that in the UK. There are discipline differences, but maybe not too much like that. How do you feel, Ingo or Udo?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a problem, general problem. It's probably not data science versus information science, but also what Sunshine said. It's a bit like computer science versus information science. I mean, I jokingly sometimes say real computer scientists doesn't care about users. We want to get rid of them.
Right.
Yeah, so we might simulate them, but please no real persons. Yeah. So and I think there are kind of cultural differences in a way. I mean, it's also a bit like maybe this discussion between natural sciences and humanities and how we do experiment. We talk about Zika and other conference talk a lot about reproducibility, and so try to reproduce a user study that might be difficult. And yeah, I think it's very interesting. There are some probably really huge gaps here. I don't know if Udo wants to add a bit to that. Or...
No, just briefly. I mean, a completely different angle on it, but I've just moved from computer science to information science, and it's a different world. It's great. And what I did was actually, so we just became an information school just this year, because that was one of my ideas to actually create this iSchool here. And for that purpose of setting up this proposal and everything, I thought it was actually quite good to get people from different areas and in the institute somehow to share some purpose and explicitly say, what is it? And it's also, we agreed that it's all about information behavior that we are doing, but very different contexts. And we still talk completely different languages, although we are all now under the umbrella of iSchool, of the iSchool consortium. But the funny things, the funny twist is the following. Now we are going to set up a faculty of computer science, which didn't exist in Regensburg until now. And now this whole thing will take yet another turn. But I think the idea is to keep the iSchool as a way of a vehicle to actually collaborate together and then be part of both the computer science community and the sort of more linguistics community. But let's see. So I'll keep you posted about what's going to happen here. But it's an interesting perspective to move from computer science to information science.
Yeah, I moved the opposite way. So yeah, but I think either way is interesting experience.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a good discussion. So any burning questions before we move on to next speaker? Will you stay with us, Nick? Because we have a closing session. We may have some further discussion time during closing session. Yeah, okay, good. So, all right.